Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation on the theories of international trade. I am your reporter for today, Michelle Joy Espabilona. In this presentation, we will cover the essential theories that explain how countries engage in trade with one another. International trade is an integral part of the global economy, and it affects every aspect of our lives, from the goods we buy to the jobs we have. So understanding the theories of international trade is essential for policymakers, business owners, and individuals who want to make informed decisions about trade. In this presentation, we will discuss the theories of international trade proposed by some of the most prominent economists in history: Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and Bertil Ohlin and Eli Heckscher. So we will explore their contributions and the relevance of their theories in today's global economy. So let's dive in and learn more about the theories that shape international trade. Adam Smith's theory of absolute advantage is one of the earliest and most fundamental theories of international trade. According to Smith, countries should specialize in producing goods and services in which they have an absolute advantage. Absolute advantage means that a country can produce a certain good or service at a lower cost and with greater efficiency than another country. Smith argues that when countries specialize in producing goods and services in which they have an absolute advantage, they can increase their overall efficiency and productivity, which leads to increased economic growth and prosperity. Specialization also allows for greater trade between countries. When a country specializes in producing a particular good, it can trade that good with other countries, exchanging it for goods that other countries specialize in producing. This leads to greater efficiency and overall benefits for all countries involved in trade. So examples of countries that have an absolute advantage in certain goods and services include Saudi Arabia, which has an absolute advantage in oil production, and Japan, which has an absolute advantage in the production of high-tech electronic goods. David Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage builds on Adam Smith's theory of absolute advantage. According to Ricardo, countries should specialize in producing goods and services in which they have the lowest opportunity costs compared to other countries. Opportunity cost is the cost of producing a good or service in terms of the alternative goods or services that could have been produced with the same resources. Ricardo argued that even if a country has an absolute advantage in producing all goods and services, it would still benefit from trade if it specializes in producing and exporting goods that it has a comparative advantage in. Comparative advantage occurs when a country can produce a good at a lower opportunity cost than another country. So the theory of comparative advantage shows that specialization and trade between countries can lead to increased efficiency, higher productivity, and greater total output. So gains from trade arise because each country can obtain goods and services that they cannot produce or produce less efficiently at a lower opportunity cost from other countries. Examples of countries that have comparative advantage include China in manufacturing, Saudi Arabia in oil production, and Brazil in coffee production. The factor endowment theory, also known as the Heckscher-Ohlin theory, builds on Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage. This theory suggests that a country will export goods that require factors of production that are abundant in the country. So while importing goods that require factors of production that are scarce. So for example, a country with abundant land resources would export agricultural products, while a country with a highly educated workforce would export services that require highly skilled labor. The factor endowment theory also suggests that trade can increase efficiency and economic growth by allowing countries to specialize in the production of goods that are in line with their factor endowments. Some of the key implications of the factor endowment theory include countries with abundant natural resources will tend to export primary products, while countries with abundant capital will tend to export manufactured goods. Trade between countries with different factor endowments can lead to increased efficiency and higher levels of economic growth. Factor endowments can change over time, which can lead to shifts in patterns of trade. So overall, the factor endowment theory provides important insights into the relationship between a country's resources and its patterns of trade. Despite the usefulness of international trade theories in understanding the benefits of trade, they have been criticized for several reasons. First, assumption of perfect competition. The theories assume that markets are perfectly competitive, which rarely exists in real world. Second, static analysis. The theories provide a static analysis of trade patterns and do not account for changes over time, such as technological advancements or shifts in demand. Third, ignoring externalities. So the theories do not consider the effects of trade on external factors, such as the environment or labor rights. And lastly, narrow scope. The theories focus primarily on the factors that influence trade, such as labor and capital, and do not account for other important factors such as transportation costs or cultural differences. So despite these criticisms, understanding the theories is still important because they provide a useful framework for understanding the benefits of trade and the importance of specialization. Additionally, they can help policymakers make informed decisions regarding trade policies. Trade theory, the economics and politics of free trade versus fair trade and protectionism. Trade theory refers to the study of how nations engage in the exchange of goods and services. These are three key approaches to trade: free trade, fair trade, and protectionism. Free trade promotes the unrestricted movement of goods and services between nations, while fair trade aims to ensure fair wages and working conditions for producers in developing countries. Protectionism, on the other hand, limits imports through tariffs and quotas to protect domestic industries. So these approaches have both economic and political implications, with debates centered around issues such as job displacement, income inequality, and global power dynamics. Free trade is a policy that promotes international trade without any government-imposed barriers, such as tariffs or quotas. Benefits of free trade include increased competition, specialization, and innovation, leading to lower prices and higher quality goods for consumers. Examples of countries that have successfully implemented free trade policies include Singapore, Hong Kong, and New Zealand, which have seen significant economic growth and increased living standards. However, critics argue that free trade can lead to job loss, especially in industries that face competition from lower cost imports. It can also exacerbate income inequality, as the benefits of free trade may not be evenly distributed among all members of society. Fair trade refers to a social movement and market-based approach to help producers in developing countries achieve better trading conditions. Its objectives include improving working conditions, promoting sustainable production, and securing fair prices for producers. The benefits of fair trade for producers in developing countries are numerous. Fair trade practices ensures that producers receive fair prices for their goods, enabling them to invest in their businesses and communities. It also helps to improve working conditions and provides access to resources that enable sustainable production. Fair trade practices also help to promote gender equity and protect the rights of marginalized groups. So despite these benefits, there are some criticisms of fair trade. One of the main criticisms is that it provides limited market access and is only available to a small number of producers. Additionally, some argue that the certification process is costly and burdensome for producers, which limits their ability to participate in the fair trade market. Protectionism refers to government policies designed to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. The objectives of protectionism include promoting domestic industries, reducing unemployment, and protecting national security. Examples of protectionist policies include tariffs, which are taxes on imported goods, and quotas, which limit the quantity of specific imported products. These policies can make imported goods more expensive, which reduces their competitiveness in the domestic market. Critics of protectionism argue that it reduces competition, which can lead to lower quality and higher prices for consumers. Additionally, protectionist policies can lead to retaliation by other countries, which can harm domestic industries that rely on exports. International trade treaties are legally binding agreements between two or more countries that aim to promote international trade by reducing barriers to trade and investment. So these treaties are crucial for promoting global trade and economic growth as they help create a more predictable, stable, and transparent environment for trade and investment. They also provide a framework for resolving disputes and protecting the rights of traders and investors. Bilateral trade agreements are agreements between two countries that aim to promote trade and investment between them. Examples of bilateral trade agreements include the North American Free Trade Agreement or NAFTA between the US, Canada, and Mexico, and the Japan-Australia Economic Partnership Agreement or JPA. So benefits of bilateral trade agreements include increased market access, reduced tariffs and other trade barriers, and greater economic integration between countries. However, they can also lead to job losses in some industries and may not address broader issues like environmental or labor standards. Drawbacks of bilateral trade agreements include discrimination against countries that are not part of the agreement, limited access to markets of the agreement, higher administrative costs of businesses due to differing rules and regulations between countries, and difficulty in resolving disputes without a pre-existing framework for dispute resolution. Multilateral trade agreements are agreements between multiple countries that aim to promote trade and investment between them. Examples of multilateral trade agreements include the World Trade Organization or WTO and the Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP. Benefits of multilateral trade agreements include increased market access, reduced tariffs and other trade barriers, and greater economic integration between countries. They also provide a framework for resolving disputes and protecting the rights of traders and investors. However, drawbacks of multilateral trade agreements include the difficulty in reaching the agreement among multiple countries with different interests and the limited scope of such agreements as they may not address broader issues like environmental or labor standards. Regional trade agreements or RTAs are agreements between countries within a specific region that aim to promote trade and investment between them. Examples of RTAs include the European Union or EU, the African Continental Free Trade Area or AFCFTA, and the Mercado Común del Sur or Mercosur in South America. Benefits of RTAs include increased market access, reduced tariffs and other trade barriers, and greater economic integration within a region. They can also promote regional stability and cooperation. However, drawbacks of RTAs include discrimination against countries that are not part of the agreement, limited access to markets outside of the region, and higher administrative costs for businesses due to differing rules and regulations within the region. They may also lead to job losses in some industries and may not address broader issues. Global trade agreements are agreements that aim to promote trade and investment among countries worldwide. Examples of global trade agreements include the WTO and the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD. So benefits of global trade agreements include increased market access, reduced tariffs and other trade barriers, and greater economic integration among countries worldwide. They also provide a framework for resolving disputes and protecting the rights of traders and investors on a global scale. However, drawbacks of global trade agreements include the difficulty in reaching agreement among multiple countries with different interests and priorities, and the potential for certain countries to dominate negotiations and outcome. They may also not address broader issues like environmental or labor standards. The trading environment of international trade refers to the economic, political, and social factors that influence the exchange of goods and services between countries. Understanding the trading environment is crucial for businesses and governments engaged in international trade. Economic factors. Economic factors that influence the trading environment include exchange rates that can impact the competitiveness of exports and imports, economic growth that can create new markets and increase demand for goods and services, and trade policies such as tariffs and quotas that can affect market access and determine the terms of trade between countries. Political factors. Political factors that influence the trading environment include government stability that can provide a more predictable trading environment, trade agreements that can reduce trade barriers and promote economic integration, and political relationships between countries that can impact trade, as conflicts and tensions can lead to trade disruptions and tariffs. Social factors. Social factors that influence the trading environment include cultural differences that can affect the demand for certain products and services, consumer preferences that can shape the types of goods and services that are traded, and social movements such as those focused on environmental or labor rights can impact the regulatory environment and influence trade policies. Tariff and non-tariff barriers are measures that countries use to restrict or regulate the flow of goods and services across borders. These measures can have significant impacts on international trade and the economies of countries involved. So tariff barriers. Tariff barriers are taxes that are imposed on imported goods and services. Tariffs can make imports more expensive and less competitive with the domestic goods and services. Tariffs can be specific, a fixed fee per unit of the product, or ad valorem, a percentage of the value of the product. Non-tariff barriers. Non-tariff barriers are a wide range of measures that countries use to restrict or regulate trade without using taxes or fees. Examples of non-tariff barriers include import quotas, technical barriers to trade such as product standards or labeling requirements, and subsidies for domestic industries. Non-tariff barriers can have similar effects of tariff barriers, making imports more expensive and less competitive. Impacts of tariff and non-tariff barriers. So tariff and non-tariff barriers can have significant impacts on international trade and the economies of countries involved. These measures can protect domestic industries from foreign competition, but they can also reduce consumer choice, increase prices, and limit economic growth. Tariff and non-tariff barriers can also lead to trade disputes and tensions between countries. Trade blocs are groups of countries that join together to promote trade and economic cooperation among themselves. There are several types of trade blocs, including free trade areas, customs unions, common markets, and economic unions. Trade blocs can have significant impacts on international trade and the economies of countries involved. Free trade areas. Free trade areas are groups of countries that agree to eliminate tariffs and other trade barriers between themselves. Members of the free trade areas are still able to set their own tariffs and trade policies with non-members. Examples of free trade areas include the North American Free Trade Agreement or NAFTA and the European Free Trade Association or EFTA. Customs unions. Custom unions are similar to free trade areas, but members also agree to a common external tariff on imports from non-members. This means that members of customs unions must have a unified trade policy with non-members. Examples of customs unions include Southern Common Market or Mercosur and the Eurasian Economic Union or EAEU. Common markets. So common markets are similar to customs unions, but they also allow for the free movement of labor and capital among members. This means that members of common markets have more integrated economies and share a common market for goods, services, and factors of production. Examples of common markets include the European Union or EU and the Caribbean Community and Common Market or CARICOM. Economic unions. Economic unions are the most integrated form of the trade bloc and involve the creation of a unified economic policy and a single currency. The members of economic unions share a common market, currency, and economic institutions and often have a high degree of political integration as well. The only example of an economic union currently in existence is the European Union or EU. General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT, is a treaty signed in 1947 that aimed to promote international trade by reducing trade barriers and establishing rules for trade. So GATT was replaced by the World Trade Organization, or WTO, in 1995, but many of its principles and agreements still form the basis of global trade today. GATT principles. GATT was based on several key principles, including non-discrimination, means that countries cannot discriminate between trading partners and must treat all members equally. Reciprocity means that countries must make concessions in trade negotiations in exchange for concessions made by their trading partners. And transparency means that countries must make their trade policies and regulations clear and accessible to other members. GATT agreements. So GATT negotiated several agreements aimed at reducing trade barriers and promoting trade, including the Kennedy Round, focused on reducing tariffs, Tokyo Round, focused on non-tariff barriers to trade, and the Uruguay Round led to the creation of the WTO and established agreements on intellectual property, services, and agriculture. Criticisms of GATT. So despite its success, GATT has also faced criticism for being too focused on free trade and promoting the interests of developed countries at the expense of developing countries. Critics argue that GATT led to the marginalization of many developing countries in the global economy, and that it prioritized the interests of multinational corporations over workers and the environment. The World Trade Organization, or WTO, is an intergovernmental organization that oversees global trade and helps member countries negotiate and enforce trade agreements. The WTO was established in 1995 to replace the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT. IPR and TRIPS. The WTO's agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, or TRIPS, aims to protect uh, intellectual property rights, or IPR, such as patents, copyrights, and trademarks in international trades. TRIPS requires member countries to implement certain minimum standards for protecting IPR and allows for disputes to be settled through the WTO's dispute settlement process. TRIMS. The WTO's Agreement on Trade-Related Investment Measures, or TRIMS, aims to prevent member countries from using investment measures to unfairly restrict trade. TRIMS prohibits certain investment measures that are considered trade distorting, such as requirements to use domestic inputs or technology. GATS, or GATS. The WTO's General Agreement on Trade in Services, or GATS, aims to promote international trade in services such as banking, telecommunications, and education. GATS require member countries to offer foreign service providers the same treatment as domestic providers, and allows for disputes to be settled through the WTO's dispute settlement process. Criticisms of the WTO. The WTO has faced criticism from various groups, including developing countries, labor unions, and environmental activists. Critics argue that the WTO promotes free trade at the expense of workers' rights and environmental protections, and that its dispute settlement process unfairly favors developed countries over developing countries. The Ministerial Conference is the highest decision-making body of the World Trade Organization, or WTO. It is made up of representatives from all WTO member countries. The Ministerial Conference meets every 2 years to discuss and make decisions on issues related to international trade. So, role and functions of the Ministerial Conference. The Ministerial Conference has several important roles and functions, including providing political guidance on the direction and priorities of the WTO's work, making decisions on issues such as trade negotiations, dispute settlement, and accession of new members, reviewing the implementation of existing WTO agreements, and discussing emerging issues and challenges in international trade. Key Ministerial Conferences. The Ministerial Conference has held several key meetings over the years, including the inaugural Ministerial Conference in Singapore in 1996, which launched new negotiations of various trade issues. The Doha Development Agenda, launched in 2001, which aimed to focus on development issues in trade negotiations. The Nairobi Ministerial Conference in 2015, which produced several important outcomes, such as the elimination of agricultural export subsidies and the work program on electronic commerce. Challenges facing the Ministerial Conference. The Ministerial Conference faces several challenges in its role as the highest decision-making body of the WTO, including the difficulty of reaching consensus among all member countries on complex trade issues, the need to balance the interests of developed and developing countries, and the growing trend towards regional and bilateral trade agreements outside of the WTO framework. Rise of new economies. So, introduction. The rise of new economies refers to the emergence of and growth of developing countries as major players in the global economy. This trend has significant implications for international trade and the balance of economic power between developed and developing countries. Characteristics of new economies. New economies typically have several characteristics, including high levels of economic growth and development, large and growing population, abundant natural resources and low-cost labor, and rapidly developing technological infrastructure. Impact on international trade. So the rise of new economies has had a significant impact on international trade, including the shift of manufacturing and other industries from developed to developing countries, increased competition and market access for developing countries, and the emergence of new trading blocs and partnerships such as the BRICS or Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Challenges and opportunities. The rise of new economies presents both challenges and opportunities for global trade, including the need for developed countries to adopt new economic realities and changing trade patterns, the potential for increased economic growth and development in developing countries, and the challenge of balancing economic growth with environmental and social sustainability. Case study analysis, the impact of NAFTA on the North American automotive industry. So introduction. The North American Free Trade Agreement or NAFTA is an agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico that was signed in 1994. One of the most significant industries affected by NAFTA is the North American automotive industry. This case study analyzes the impact of NAFTA on the North American automotive industry. Background. Before the implementation of NAFTA, the automotive industry in the North America was dominated by the United States. The US had a trade surplus in automotive products, while Canada and Mexico had trade deficits. NAFTA eliminated most tariffs on automotive products between the three countries, making it easier and cheaper for manufacturers to produce and sell vehicles across North America. Analysis. So NAFTA has had a significant impact on the North American automotive industry. One of the most notable effects of NAFTA has been the increase in trade between the three countries. The elimination of tariffs on automotive products has made it easier and more cost-effective for manufacturers to produce and sell vehicles across North America. As a result, the North American automotive industry has become more integrated, with parts and vehicles moving freely across borders. Another effect of NAFTA on the North American automotive industry has been the shift in production to Mexico. With lower labor costs and a growing economy, Mexico has become an attractive location for automotive manufacturers to produce vehicles. As a result, many manufacturers have moved production facilities to Mexico, leading to a decline in manufacturing jobs in the United States and Canada. NAFTA has also had an impact on the types of vehicles produced in North America. With the elimination of tariffs, manufacturers are free to produce vehicles in the location that makes the most economic sense. This had led to a shift in the types of vehicles produced in each country. For example, Mexico has become a hub for small cars and compact SUVs, while the United States has focused on larger vehicles such as trucks and SUVs. So conclusion. NAFTA has had a significant impact on the North American automotive industry. While the agreement has led to the increased trade and economic growth, it has also led to the loss of manufacturing jobs in the United States and Canada. Additionally, the shift in production to Mexico has raised concerns about labor standards and working conditions. So overall, NAFTA has had both positive and negative effects on the North American automotive industry, highlighting the complex nature of international trade agreements. And SWOT analysis of NAFTA on the North American automotive industry. Strengths. First is increased competition. The elimination of tariffs under NAFTA led to increased competition among automotive manufacturers in North America, resulting in improved quality, greater innovation, and lower prices for consumers. Second is access to a larger market. NAFTA created a larger market for automotive manufacturers, allowing them to reach a broader customer base and increase their sales. And increased efficiency. The elimination of trade barriers and the streamlined regulations under NAFTA allowed automotive manufacturers to optimize their supply chains and increase efficiency, resulting in cost savings and improved productivity. Weaknesses. First is job losses. While NAFTA increased efficiency and productivity in the automotive industry, it also led to job losses in certain areas of the industry, such as manufacturing, as companies relocated operations to areas with lower labor costs. Unequal benefits. So while NAFTA led to significant benefits for the U.S. automotive industry, such as increased exports and improved competitiveness, Canada and Mexico did not experience the same level of benefits. And dependence on foreign markets. Increased competition and access to foreign markets under NAFTA have made the North American automotive industry more dependent on exports, making it vulnerable to changes in global economic conditions. Opportunities. Increased collaboration. NAFTA provides an opportunity for increased collaboration between automotive manufacturers in the US, Canada, and Mexico, allowing for the sharing of knowledge, resources, and expertise. Expansion into new markets. The elimination of trade barriers under NAFTA provides an opportunity for automotive manufacturers to expand into new markets outside of North America. And growth of electric and autonomous vehicles. The increased competition and access to resources under NAFTA can drive the growth of electric and autonomous vehicles in North America, as manufacturers can leverage their combined expertise to develop and produce these technologies. Threats. Policy changes. Changes in government policies such as potential changes to NAFTA or the imposition of new tariffs could negatively impact the North American automotive industry. Economic downturns. The North American automotive industry is vulnerable to economic downturns, which could lead to decreased demand and lower sales. And technological disruption. The automotive industry is rapidly evolving, with new technologies such as electric and autonomous vehicles disrupting traditional manufacturing and sales models. So failure to adapt to these changes could pose a threat to the industry. Immediate issue. The immediate issue is to analyze the impact of NAFTA on the North American automotive industry. The agreement was signed in 1994, and after almost 3 decades, it is necessary to evaluate its effectiveness and determine the changes that need to be made to support the industry's growth and success. Generalization. The general issue is the impact of trade agreements on the North American automotive industry. NAFTA is one of the most significant agreements that affect the industry, but there are other agreements and policies that can also impact it. Therefore, it is essential to understand how these agreements and policies can shape the industry's future and develop strategies to navigate potential challenges. Importance. The importance of this issue is high because the North American automotive industry is a significant contributor to the regional economy, providing jobs and generating revenue. The industry also plays a critical role in driving innovation and technological advancements, which have far-reaching impacts on other industries and society as a whole. Urgency. The urgency of this issue is moderate. While it is important to analyze the impact of NAFTA and other trade agreements on the automotive industry, the industry has been operating under NAFTA for almost 3 decades, and there is no immediate threat to its stability or growth. However, as the industry continues to evolve and face new challenges, it is important to address this issue to ensure its long-term success. Analysis of people. NAFTA had a significant impact on the people working in the North American automotive industry. The elimination of tariffs and trade barriers created new opportunities for workers, but also led to job losses in some areas. Workers in the United States, in particular, were negatively affected as manufacturers moved production to Mexico, where labor costs were lower. This led to job losses and economic hardship for many workers and their families. Analysis of strategy. The implementation of NAFTA changed the strategy of many automotive companies in North America. The elimination of trade barriers and tariffs led to increased competition and pressure to reduce costs. To remain competitive, companies had to develop new strategies to increase efficiency, productivity, and profitability. Some companies invested in new technology and automation, while others focused on developing new products and expanding their customer base. Analysis of market conditions. NAFTA had a significant impact on the market conditions in the North American automotive industry. The elimination of trade barriers and tariffs created a more competitive environment, allowing manufacturers to access a larger market and increase sales and revenue. However, the agreement also created dependence on foreign markets, which can be risky in times of economic uncertainty. Companies had to adapt to these new market conditions and develop strategies to remain competitive and profitable. Analysis of skill and knowledge. The implementation of NAFTA also changed the skill and knowledge requirements in the North American automotive industry. Companies had to adapt to new technologies and production methods to remain competitive. Workers also had to develop new skills and knowledge to work with these new technologies and methods. This created new opportunities for workers with technical and engineering skills, but also led to job losses for workers with less specialized skills. Analysis of systems. NAFTA had a significant impact on the systems used in the North American automotive industry. Companies had to adapt to new supply chains and production methods to remain competitive. The elimination of trade barriers and tariffs also led to increased cross-border trade and transportation, requiring new systems to manage logistics and supply chain management. Additionally, new regulations and standards were put in place to ensure safety and environmental protection, which required companies to develop new systems to comply with these regulations. Some potential alternative solutions for addressing the impact of NAFTA on the North American automotive industry could include the option A, implementing new trade agreements. One alternative could be to negotiate new trade agreements that could help to address some of the negative impacts of NAFTA on the automotive industry. For example, new agreements could be negotiated that set tariffs and trade rules that are more favorable to North American automakers, and that could help to promote more balanced trade between the three countries. Option B, encouraging investment in the automotive industry. Another alternative could be to encourage more investment in the North American automotive industry, which could help to support the growth of the industry and make it more competitive. This could involve providing incentives for automakers to build new plants in North America, or providing funding for research and development that could help to drive innovation in the industry. Option C, promoting domestic consumption. So another alternative could be to promote more domestic consumption of North American made vehicles. This could involve launching campaigns to encourage consumers to buy North American made vehicles, or providing incentives such as tax breaks or subsidies for consumers who purchase North American made vehicles. Option D is providing training and education for workers. So another alternative could be to provide training and education programs for workers in the North American automotive industry, which could help to improve their skills and knowledge and make them more competitive in the global market. This could involve partnering with universities and vocational schools to provide training programs, or providing funding for apprenticeship programs that would give workers hands-on experience in the industry. And last option, option E, increasing government support for the industry. So another alternative could be to increase government support for the North American automotive industry, which could help to promote growth and development. This could involve providing funding for research and development, offering tax breaks or subsidies for automakers, or launching marketing campaigns to promote the industry and its products. Based on the potential decision criteria, we can assess the impact of NAFTA on the North American automotive industry as follows. For qualitative criteria, first is the competitive advantage. So NAFTA provided a competitive advantage to automotive manufacturers by eliminating most tariffs on automotive products between the three countries, making it easier and cheaper for manufacturers to produce and sell vehicles across North America. For customer satisfaction, NAFTA has positively impacted customer satisfaction by increasing the availability of a wide range of vehicles at lower prices. For employer morale, NAFTA has improved employer morale by creating new jobs and opportunities for workers in the automotive industry. Corporate image. NAFTA has improved the corporate image of automotive manufacturers by enabling them to expand their businesses and increase their market shares. Ease of implementation. NAFTA has been relatively easy to implement as it eliminated most tariffs on automotive products between the three countries, and the automotive industry was one of the most significant beneficiaries. For synergy, NAFTA has promoted synergy between the three countries by encouraging collaboration and partnerships among automotive manufacturers across North America. For ethics, the impact of NAFTA on ethics in the automotive industry is mixed. While it has created new jobs and opportunities, it has also contributed to increased competition and price pressure, which can lead to ethical concerns. For flexibility, NAFTA has increased flexibility in the North American automotive industry by enabling manufacturers to produce and sell vehicles across borders. For safety, NAFTA has had little impact on safety in the North American automotive industry, as regulations related to safety were already in place before NAFTA. For obsolescence, NAFTA has accelerated the pace of obsolescence in the North American automotive industry by increasing competition and putting pressure on manufacturers to innovate and introduce new technologies. For cultural sensitivity, NAFTA has promoted cultural sensitivity in the North American automotive industry by encouraging collaboration and partnerships among manufacturers from different countries. For motivation, NAFTA has positively impacted motivation in the North American automotive industry by creating new jobs and opportunities for workers. And for goodwill, NAFTA has improved the goodwill of automotive manufacturers by enabling them to expand their businesses and increase their market shares. For quantitative criteria, first is the profit. NAFTA has positively impacted the profit margins of automotive manufacturers by reducing production costs and increasing market access. For cost, NAFTA has reduced the costs of production of automotive manufacturers by eliminating most tariffs on automotive products between the three countries. For return on investment, NAFTA has increased the return on investment for automotive manufacturers by creating new jobs and opportunities for workers and increasing market access. For market share, NAFTA has positively impacted the market share of automotive manufacturers by enabling them to expand their businesses and increase their reach across North America. For capacity, NAFTA has increased the capacity of automotive manufacturers by enabling them to produce and sell vehicles across borders. For delivery time, NAFTA has reduced delivery time for automotive manufacturers by streamlining trade processes and eliminating most tariffs on automotive products between the three countries. For risk, NAFTA has increased the risk for automotive manufacturers by intensifying competition and increasing price pressure. For cash flow, NAFTA has positively impacted the cash flow of automotive manufacturers by increasing market access and reducing production costs. For inventory turn, NAFTA has positively impacted the inventory turn of automotive manufacturers by reducing production costs and increasing market access. For productivity, NAFTA has improved the productivity of automotive manufacturers by streamlining trade processes and enabling them to produce and sell vehicles across borders. For staff turnover, NAFTA has had little impact on staff turnover in the North American automotive industry. For quality, NAFTA has increased the quality of vehicles produced in the North American automotive industry by promoting competition and encouraging innovation. For growth rate, NAFTA has positively impacted the growth rate of automotive manufacturers by enabling them to expand their businesses and increase their market shares. Based on the analysis and assessment, the best solution among these alternatives would be to implement new trade agreements, which is the option A. So negotiating new trade agreements could help to address some of the negative impacts of NAFTA on the automotive industry by setting tariffs and trade rules that are more favorable to North American automakers and promoting more balanced trade between the three countries. For the action and implementation plan, so for the timing and milestones, trade negotiators and government officials from the US, Canada, and Mexico. What? Negotiate new trade agreements that promote more balanced trade and are more favorable to North American automakers. When? Start negotiations within the next year. Where? Meeting locations to be determined. And how? Meetings between negotiators and the government officials to discuss and negotiate terms of new trade agreements. Milestones. So within the next 3 months, schedule the first meeting between trade negotiators and government officials from the US, Canada, and Mexico. Then within the next 6 months, establish the framework for the new trade agreements that address the concerns and interests of all three countries. Then within the next 12 months, finalize and sign the new trade agreements that promote more balanced trade and are more favorable to North American automakers. Then within the next 18 months, implement the new trade agreements and monitor their effectiveness in supporting the growth and competitiveness of the North American automotive industry. These are my references. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I hope that the information provided was insightful and useful for you. Please feel free to ask any questions or share any thoughts that you may have. Thank you again for your attention. Have a nice day and God bless everyone.